Welcome, Sangha. There are 48 of us here at the East Bay Meditation Center, People of Color Sangha weekly meeting. And we'll start now with some meditation and go to around 8:10 p.m. Pacific time. Some of you are in different time zones. And then have a 5-minute bio break. I prepared a Dharma Talk. And then the last 5 minutes before 9 will be closing announcements by our People of Color Sangha volunteer coordinating team, some of them to which we really owe and gratefully offer so much gratitude. All of East Bay Meditation Center's weekly practice groups are coordinated and led by volunteers. And they are labors of love and a practice unto itself to serve the community in that way. So anytime you have the chance, please say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to the weekly practice group coordinators. Okay, that's my plug. If you like, let's begin our period of mindfulness meditation. This will be mindfulness meditation in a stationary posture. And of course, being on Zoom, it gives us so much more freedom to take care of ourselves, I hope. Some of us may be in situations with small children and other pressuring elements or what can be. However, I hope that you are in a safe situation or safe enough for the moment where you can relax, you can drop down into the practice, and you can really enjoy the feeling of connection that we definitely can generate and can we can generate it and we can feel it actually. Many people say on Zoom in this virtual environment. It's interesting how that can happen. It's not the same as being together in person at East Bay Meditation Center in the big main temple space. And there are added opportunities also for what we give up. What we've received is that our Sangha has grown to be global and to be to connect us to so many wonderful new practitioners in other parts of the country, in other countries, and in the world. We are larger. Okay, so we're going to have some mindfulness meditation in a stationary posture. That means seated in a chair. Perhaps you're sitting on the floor on meditation mats and cushions, and perhaps you are lying down. Any of those positions is fine. If you want to try standing a little bit, that's fine as well. Just be careful you don't lose your balance. If you really need to move, I urge you to do so mindfully. You may have a practice of Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, or simply need to stretch. During this time of pandemic, many of us, myself included, are indoors a lot of the time or very restricted in our movements. So the first invitation is to take care of your body, and you are the expert on what is happening in your body and what you need. Please use the bathroom, get a drink of water, tea, whatever you need. Feel welcome to take care of yourself. As people of color, even more important because we want to be building strength and resilience in our communities for the long haul, for whatever it is that lies ahead. And that's kind of the topic of my talk tonight. We need to conserve our energies and build our energies and build our connectivity. Ground ourselves. Be ready for action. So we're finding our posture and going in that direction of a posture that for you in this moment is stable, grounded, as comfortable as possible, and also that supports being alert and awake. So relaxed and alert. Some of us may be tired. If you are and you fall asleep, I'm sure you need it. So don't worry at all about that. To the extent possible, relaxed and alert. And it's up to you to decide what that is and perhaps to experiment what supports those qualities. So now that you found your position, and feel free to make what my yoga teacher calls micro adjustments in your posture or larger movements and adjustments. You're invited to close your eyes gently or leave them open. To let in some light from the space you're in. You might experiment with doing something different than you normally do for just a minute or so and see how it feels. The purpose of whatever you're doing with your eyes is twofold: to feel safer and more grounded, number one. Number two, to reduce distractions. So some people feel less distracted and safer with their eyes closed. Others feel more distracted with their eyes closed because they may have just a lot of flashing images and maybe like sort of dreamlike images may appear. That's not unusual. So we're really grounding ourselves in the here and the now, very much in what we call reality, in the present moment. And if you like, beginning by taking a few deep, slow breaths, or not, if it doesn't work for you. Perhaps breathing in, and as we breathe out, relaxing, letting the shoulders drop, letting the muscles in the face soften. Breathing in, perhaps becoming aware of tension, and breathing out, releasing tension. And East Bay Meditation Center now increasingly is supporting access, so exciting, to our programs for deaf participants. And we have a wonderful group of American Sign Language, ASL interpreters. We don't have one or more interpreters with us here tonight, so I'm assuming everyone is a hearing person. And if you like, in this meditative state, you might listen to any sounds that are in your environment. Once again, I'm assuming you are safe. Sounds can signal non-safety if we're on the street, and that's why we're alert. So if you're safe where you are, I invite you to simply listen to whatever sounds you can hear. And notice that the activity we call hearing is taking place. So what we're practicing is called mindfulness of sounds, mindfulness of perceiving sounds. Or using sounds as the object of our meditation. The object of meditation means what we're focusing on. So if this works for you, you could stay with it the whole time. It's a wonderful practice. And if we like now, shifting to noticing and observing with an attitude, I hope, of friendliness and kindness to ourselves. So I deeply invite you to adopt an attitude of as though you're your own best friend. Like, oh, how wonderful. Put your name in. So, oh, Mushim is making the effort to practice mindfulness meditation. Good for her. Good job. And shifting our attention, if we like, to noticing physical sensations. Perhaps the sensation of your weight pressing into whatever you're seated or lying on. Sensations of contact, pressure, maybe warmth, coolness. You might be noticing and observing tingling. If this is accessible to you, And you always have the right to pass on anything at an EBMC event. So if accessible to you, you might like to notice the sensations in your feet. Can you feel your toes? You might wiggle them a little, the space between the toes. Sensations on the soles of the feet, the heels, across the top of the feet, the ankles. What do you notice? And with this friendly and kind curiosity, if you'd like to do this, you can, this is called body scanning. You can scan your hands, your arms, the back of your head, any part of your body, just to notice, what sensations am I noticing? The sensation of the body as a whole. Again, perhaps noticing the sensation of our weight, contact and pressure between surfaces of parts of the body and what's underneath them. So for instance, in this style of meditation, your hands can be placed wherever it's comfortable for them to be placed. Relax. If they're on your thighs or your legs, palms down. How does that feel? Are there sensations of warmth, contact? What do you notice? And so in your practice of mindfulness meditation, you have some choices. You could stay with sound meditation. You can, if you like, hang out with noticing any sensations, any physical sensations you're noticing. Perhaps with gentle curiosity, not forgetting, scanning around some areas we might normally not think about, like the back of the knee, the inside of the elbow. It can actually be kind of fun. Or if this works for us, at this choice point, we might make a choice to concentrate a little bit on noticing sensations of the breath. If you like, you can take a few deep breaths or not. We're headed in the direction of the breath being absolutely natural, whatever that means for your body at this moment. The breath may be short, medium, or long, rough or smooth. Simply notice, observe. And as we breathe in and out at our own natural pace, you're invited to notice where you feel the breath in the body. There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. Do we feel movement, contraction, expansion, rising, falling? What do we notice about sensations of temperature, warmth, and coolness, perhaps in the nostrils? See what you notice. And just as there are physical sensations we can notice, coming and going, getting stronger, getting weaker, constantly changing usually, we might also become aware of mental and emotional phenomena. So what that means is, are you aware that thoughts, your brain is generating thoughts? I am. Thinking is occurring. And with great kindness to ourselves, noting very lightly emotions that may be present. Noticing if they change or they don't change, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And if you like experimenting, perhaps with taking, for the moment, letting the words I, me, and mine drop away. And instead of saying, I feel so sad. There have been many losses during this time, and there always are. Perhaps experimenting with making a very light mental note that, oh, sadness is arising. One of our Sangha members has a new grandchild and sent a photo around today. Oh, joy is arising. Beautiful baby. Happiness is arising. Whatever is true for you, notice, observe with kindness. Be curious about your own experience. And if you can, just keep lightly, gently returning to noticing physical sensations. And in the last few minutes of this period of meditation in Sangha, in spiritual community, I invite you to incline the heart-mind towards the quality of metta, which means unconditional goodwill, unconditional loving kindness. It's called one of the 4 immeasurables, meaning it's so big we can't measure it. And starting with extending goodwill and loving kindness toward yourself, if at all possible. You can use your own words or these words: may I be safe and protected from harm, physical harm and mental harm. If you like, making a gesture of self-care by placing perhaps a hand on your heart or 2 hands, or just some very gentle self-touch. May I be safe. I wish safety for myself. May I enjoy well-being, as much health and strength as is possible. If I have chronic illness or chronic pain, I wish myself moments of well-being, the experience of well-being. May I be happy and truly peaceful. May I know the causes of happiness. And may I live with joy. May I live with ease. Turning these wishes of goodwill outward towards all 73 of us who are here on this Zoom meeting tonight, and spreading out from our circle in all directions towards all people, all animals, all insects, all forms of life at the microbial level, tiny for us. We could consider the planet one giant life form. To all beings in all directions, may all beings be safe and may they all be protected from harm, physical harm and mental harm. May all living beings without exception be as strong and healthy as possible, enjoying well-being. May they be peaceful and may they be truly happy. May they not suffer. May they know the causes of suffering, and may we decrease those causes of suffering. May all beings live with more joy and more ease. And if you like, opening your eyes if they're closed. And I again invite you to, if it works for you, feel your feet. You might stamp your feet a little bit, wiggle your toes, do a little stretch if you like that. And you might look around and just notice something in your room where you are that doesn't have a lot of emotional ties to it. Just something that's kind of neutral, and just notice it's there. That can all help to bring us into the present moment. Welcome back from your break, family. And thank you for beautiful practice. Thank you for the practice of being in community together in this way. That's a practice too. To be present with our community. There was an inquiry in the chat about a quote that I brought last time, and I brought it this time too because it's a good one, by Sonia Renee Taylor. And you'll see that in the chat. And I'll read that in a moment because I think it's a very good quote for the time that we're in. The talk I prepared tonight is titled, What is Strategic Practice? What is strategic practice? Strategy, strategic practice. How to be a quote unquote guerrilla yogi or guerrilla yogi. I think we usually say guerrilla in English. And that's Guerrilla, meaning warrior. And I'll start by acknowledging and thanking some of the sources of tonight's talk. That term came from Vipassana Hawai'i teacher, my friend Jesse Maceo Vega-Frey. I'd also like to thank my close colleague, people of color Sangha teacher, an EBMC teacher, martial arts master John W. Ellis IV of the Ananda Martial Arts and Fitness Academy, right here in Oakland, California, Lishan territory. I'd like to thank my friend Arash Hale, also known as Shammy D. He's a wonderful DJ in Los Angeles. And also my Japanese ancestors on my mother's side, some of whom, according to family legend, were samurai warriors. I think most were farmers. And also Sensei Michelle Benjamin Mickey of Five Changes in Manzanita Village in Southern California. She has been a Buddhist teacher, wonderful artist, and martial arts master. I was thinking as I was preparing this talk that for some reason throughout my life, I've attracted martial arts practitioners and teachers and lawyers, of which I'm neither one. However, I think what they really have in common is exactly what I'm inviting us to consider this evening, of in our spiritual practice and indeed in our everyday life, in everything we do. Do we know how to be for ourselves, not from anyone else telling us? Do we know how to be strategic? Do we know how to be tactical? In other words, do we know what our resources are? Do we know what our goals are? And do we know how to use those resources most efficiently and most effectively to reach our goals or to go in the direction of our goals without wasting time, energy, resources, or wandering off and getting distracted? These are very important qualities to, I think, people in any profession, in any activity. I am a mother. I've worked a lot with children, and it's extremely important when one is with young children, or probably kids of any age, but particularly young children, to watch how much energy we have, because the children are dependent on us. So we don't want to run out of energy and suddenly have to collapse exhausted, because who's going to take care of the kids? So you can hear I'm talking about this in a very practical, present-centered way of how effectively we can connect to the resources that we have. Do we even know all the resources we have? Community is a huge resource, and it's a resource in which we don't know exactly what is there. It's only by connecting more and more to our community, by showing up and being more and more present, it's only by developing more relationships to community that we even know what might be there for us. The friend who can refer us to a new doctor, the friend who can tell us the best car mechanic where we can get our car fixed if we have a car, the friend who helps us to find a new place to live if we need to leave the place that we're living. These are all functions of community and of relationship. So we can be very strategic about how we reach out and how we cultivate those relationships. I also want at the start to firmly state that this talk is dealing with a lot of metaphorical material. I am not talking about committing violent acts. And through your considering some of what I'm going to present, however, I do think that this is a radical and at the same time, interestingly, traditional, going back to kind of back in the day, presentation of the Dharma or the Dhamma. I'm inviting you to enter a boldly compassionate and perhaps different perspective. It might be the same for you or different on the kind of meditation and life practices we might need now during this watershed time in the history of the United States. So I don't know if there are those of us present, because we now have 72 folks present with us. If we're all in the United States, I would say from my knowledge that in all parts of the world, there's quite enough going on with the COVID-19 pandemic, the economic turmoil, lots of political turmoil, and of course, ongoing climate crisis. It's often been said this is an unprecedented time. And this is a time of which one of our leading social justice activists in the United States, who is a woman of color, Sonia Renee Taylor, author of the book and also the website, The Body is Not an Apology, has said at the start of the pandemic in the United States, where we are in the Bay Area, March 2020, and amidst the shock of it and the sudden radical change of how we did everything, where we could go and not go, what we could do and not do, everything changed completely and very, very quickly. And some people very understandably were saying, oh, I just long to go back to normal, where I could go out and walk down the street and eat an ice cream cone and talk to people. And of course we felt that. However, Sonia Renee Taylor said, and I agree, we will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all of humanity and all of nature. We should not long to return, my friends, Sonia Renee Taylor says. Why? Because we are being given the opportunity to now stitch a new garment, to create new forms, to co-create the world in which we want to live, and we want our children, our grandchildren, our descendants, whether they're by family affiliation, spiritual affiliation, children we've never met. We're being given the opportunity to co-create a world that works for all. So I know this is being recorded, and I'll say that my name is Mushim Patricia Ikeda. Mushim is a Korean Buddhist name. My lineage is Korean originally, and I am of Japanese descent. My pronouns are she and her, and What you're seeing now is my room, is my home on unceded Lishan land, also known as Oakland, California, in the United States. Today is November 12th, 2020, only a bit more than a week after the US presidential elections. Although Joe Biden is predicted to be the winner, there have been concerns that the current occupant of the White House, Donald Trump, and his supporters might try to stage a coup and refuse to leave. So in the activist circles that I'm in, there's been a lot of preparation. Once again, strategic and tactical, not simply voicing fears and getting more and more worried and then letting that drain our energy, saying, let's get to work. What can we do about this? How can we prepare? I did a training through Choose Democracy US about what to do in case of a coup. And I felt a lot better after I did. And literally just before coming onto this Zoom, I got the late breaking news, the just breaking news from the New York Times that said that top US government officials have declared the presidential election to be, quote, the most secure, unquote, in history, saying that there was no sign any voting system was compromised. To that I say, okay. These are strongly volatile times, this mixture of political turmoil. Oh, and it says in the chat, Arizona was just called for Biden. So these are strongly volatile times. As events are unfolding, I'm not psychic. I don't know what's going to happen. And therefore, I want to prepare myself as much as possible to go through this with the best physical health, the best mental and emotional health, the best spiritual health that is possible for me in my circumstances. And I invite you to do the same for yourself. I think that is part of, if we're going to use the term spiritual warrior, sometimes peace warrior, that these are very much qualities of self-care and of just paying attention to how well we can maintain ourselves for our friends, for our family, for our community. My original training as a Zen student in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in Toronto, Canada, for some stretches of time, we had 2 temples at that time, in the early 80s, was under a teacher who is a Korean Zen monk. And he had a formula, and this was his formula. He said, my formula is simplicity, clarity, and spiritual strength. So I invite you to just feel what those words mean for you. What it means in terms of your daily actions, what you do, what you don't do, what you say, what you don't say, what you listen to, what you don't listen to. There's now a term, as you may know, doom scrolling, which means people getting completely carried away with, usually on their phones, going from one doomsday piece of news to the next and growing ever more agitated and anxious and angry in the process. We do have the ability, oftentimes, perhaps not all the time, we do have the ability to say, this is what I'm going to let in through my sense doors, and this is what I am not going to let in through my sense doors. That's a choice of mindfulness. You don't have to be meditating, quote unquote, to ask. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, what am I ingesting? What am I bringing into my body mind through what I'm eating, hearing, and speaking? To what am I relating to? So simplicity, clarity, spiritual strength is a strategy. And it has played out in my life in very many imperfect ways. Ultimately, I feel very many beneficial ways in my life as a meditation practitioner, as a former monastic living under a complete vow of poverty, former single mother, when I was helping to start East Bay Meditation Center, and I was on the board and we were taking home garbage and recycling in our cars because we didn't have a contract and doing everything. So much love has gone into East Bay Meditation Center. It has simplicity, clarity, and spiritual strength has been the banner I've raised as a peace warrior entering into this pandemic. In our meditation practice and mindfulness, we might ask, how do we become strong enough and wise enough? And I always add on imperfectly. This is not about achieving some abnormal state of mythical, I don't even know what to call it, because I don't like to use the word perfection, of mythical, divine, mystical power, I guess I would say. Now I'm talking about us as real people living real lives. So how do we become strong enough and wise enough? I will say tactical and strategic enough to battle, quote unquote, or sometimes I've heard Buddhist teachers say neutralize, what are called the three poisons in Buddhist practice: greed, hatred, and delusion. How do we battle or neutralize greed, hatred, and delusion in ourselves and in our societies, in the structures of our societies, our governments? So my question to you for reflection and meditation and contemplation is, tomorrow or tonight, later tonight, or the next day, is what do you think your part is in stitching this new garment for all of humanity and all of life? So I now want to pause and introduce my friend Jesse Maceo Vega-Frey's book, which is available for free. He lives in a very traditional way. He's a Vipassana meditation teacher, and he lives completely on dana, on generous giving, and teaches at Vipassana Hawai'i. So please, and I think he has a website called Do Less for Peace. So I'd like to invite Evan, please. I have a few slides to just kind of set the stage for this, or give you some tone. And thank you, you see in the chat, do less for peace, not do more, do less. So go there and see what Jesse's saying. This is the big island of Hawaii, part of the Hawaiian Islands that's called Hawaii. And it's called the Big Island because it's the size of Rhode Island, the state. It's the biggest one. And what you're seeing is a historic temple, Buddhist temple, Soto Zen temple, which is well over 100 years old, called Daifukuji Soto Zen Mission Temple. And that is my niece, who is also the deacon of the temple, the lay temple assistant, Amy Jikai Nakade, and the temple dog, Michi. So you can see it's beautiful. It's a very old wooden structure, and they've restored it with loving care. So next slide, please. And that is the priest of Daifukuji, my cousin, Reverend Mary Jiko Nakade. Very wonderful practitioner, wonderful, wonderful priest. She is one of my great role models in Buddhist life. And there she is in this room that's right adjacent to the main Buddha hall. It's all kind of open. This is Hawaii, so the doors are always open and wonderful air is flowing through, unless it's raining hard. And then in the next slide, You'll see me. That's when I was there in 2018, the last time I was there. I'd love to go back, pointing up at their then new banners, which are trilingual. So Japanese, English, and Hawaiian, pointing to the qualities of giving, kind speech, good deeds, and empathy. And in back of me, you'll see that there's a little library, and then in the far back is what's called the Kannon-do. Kannon means Kuan Yin, same word as Kuan Yin. And so that is the room that is dedicated to compassion. And that's where they have sitting meditation on the floor, and some people might use chairs. And then the next slide, which I think is our next to final slide. So that's when I was there, and I did connect with Jesse. That's Jesse Maceo Vega-Frey, my friend, wonderful teacher. You can see him on YouTube and lots of places. And there we are with the beautiful Kannon, the Bodhisattva of great compassion, a beautiful standing figure in back of us. And then the final slide shows Jesse's book, which again is available for free download and by Donna. So please do give Donna Insurgent Heart, a Vipassana Manual for the Guerrilla Yogi. So thank you, Evan, if you could stop the screen share. In this book, which Jesse did share with me in draft form, I guess it was last year or maybe the year before then, there is a quote from the Buddha, from the Dhammapada, one of my favorite texts, an early compendium of the sayings of the historical Buddha. And it says, "Greater in battle than the man who would conquer 1,000 men is the one who would conquer just one, himself." So making this more gender inclusive, greater in battle than the person who would conquer 1,000 persons. So greater than all that is the person who would conquer just one person, themselves. Conquer does not mean here oppress or take over. It means, can we rule ourselves wisely? It means, can we be conscious of what we're doing and saying? And again, strategic in our actions to go in the direction of liberation and of awakening that has both a spiritual meaning and a political meaning. It might mean something different to everyone. What does it mean to you? What are your aspirations to live as a free person? So in this book, which is very interesting and quite provocative and quite original, I think, it says that this is where Thich Nhat Hanh in this book meets Ho Chi Minh, where the Dalai Lama meets Mao Zedong, where the middle path meets the shining path. The path to peace can feel like a war. Indeed, the Buddha used countless martial metaphors to describe his path to liberation. And this is true. Developing the example of the Guerrilla Yogi, Vipassana teacher Jesse Maceo Vega-Frey plots a course through the energetic, decisive, and courageous aspects of the practice that must also be balanced by the qualities of humility, protection, love, and skillful retreat. So this is where I invite us to place our attention, folks, is on these qualities. And I'll repeat them. How do they show up in your life and in the people you admire? Energetic, decisive, courageous, humble, protective, loving, and skillful in retreat. In other words, run away in order to fight another day. I'm pretty good at that one. It is a warrior path that takes into account the humble reality of our efforts to completely free the heart from greed, hatred, and delusion. To completely free our hearts from greed, hatred, and delusion. I do have a practice of yoga. I love my teacher, and I've been with him for years now. And I've always liked the asana or pose of the humble warrior. I find that very, very moving. So it's a pose where those of you who do yoga know that the head is bent. There's a bending forward. It's a very strong pose. And it's also one of, I would say, spiritual surrender, because we're bowing the heads. We're not looking around to see what's coming at us. It's a very moving pose for me. The humility of the warrior. So in his book, Jesse quotes Che Guevara on guerrilla warfare and says, hit and run, quote unquote. Some call this scornfully, and this is accurate. Hit and run, wait, lie in ambush, again hit and run, and thus repeatedly without giving any rest to the enemy. There is in all this, it would appear, a negative quality, an attitude of retreat, of avoiding frontal fights. However, this is consequent upon the general strategy of guerrilla warfare, which is the same in its ultimate end as in any warfare, to win. And it does say to annihilate the enemy. So again, I want to assure you that Jesse is talking about this as part of spiritual practice in a metaphorical way. I will not speak for him because there is complexity there. I'll speak for myself and say that what is important to me here that I'd like to bring forward in the short time that we have is that if in any conflict or confrontation, we are clearly out-resourced by the parties that we're in conflict with, the other side, so to speak, that if they clearly have more power, if they clearly have more resource, if they clearly have more weapons, if we want to use that term, which as Black, Indigenous people of color, we may well use those terms at times, that it doesn't make any sense to have a frontal confrontation because we will inevitably lose. We might feel we're going to martyr ourselves. However, speaking for myself, I'm not at all interested in being a martyr for the cause. I'm interested in joining with you, and I'm interested in being in this for the long haul in order that we can leverage the greatest changes and the transformation that is possible with everything that we can connect to, all of our resources, to produce more equity, to produce more justice, and therefore more peace for more people, not only in this country, but throughout the world to whatever extent that we do have influence. So striking and running away in order to regroup, to pool our resources, whatever we have, to renew our energies, and most importantly, to very carefully and wisely using all of our intelligence to figure out what exactly can we achieve with the resources we have and with the tactical advantages that we may have in a shifting landscape, in a volatile situation. What came up for me as I considered this strategy, which as someone who's been very much affected by poverty in my life, that I've had to be really careful about what I have had, especially when I had my son and I was just trying to keep everything together. Just every resource was so precious to me, and I tried to be so careful about how I put my life together, because I didn't want to collapse and run out of energy, to put it bluntly. And so when I thought of this strategy of coming forward, making our move, doing our strategic move, and then retreating and kind of disappearing and coming in from unexpected angles, it also in my mind connected to what I once heard another Vipassana teacher. And I will take responsibility for this comparison. This is not something that this teacher said. It's a teacher who's taught at East Bay Meditation Center. Arena Weissman was once talking about how we can use our practice of mindfulness in order to try to heal trauma, and that it's not best. And I believe really the psychotherapists and the experts I know all agree, it's best to titrate or to try to just let in a sustainable way, not to overwhelm ourselves. What we can do in terms of contacting it and touching it in order to heal it, to acknowledge and to heal it. So what Arena said, as I recall, was it's like circling around the distressing memory of the great injury. And then when we feel strong enough, going a little closer and touching it, and then backing off and then circling around. So that movement is very important. We're not getting stuck in fight or flight or freeze. We're circling around it. And then when we feel okay about it, it's our choice. It's our agency. We might go a little closer, remember a little bit more, perhaps share a little more with someone, perhaps journal a little more with someone. And we can do this as a community as well. The old model where we said the most upsetting things possible, true though they are, and everyone becomes more and more traumatized, has, I think, pretty much been put aside as not the most effective use, again, of the healing powers that we have as individuals, as practitioners, and as communities. Therefore, being wise, being strategic, coming forward, touching on things, moving backward into more stillness, more, it could be actually more joyful movement, dancing, yoga, mindful movement, and thus healing ourselves little by little, slowly and surely, rather than hoping for one giant transformation, is, I believe, for me, a function of what we might call the Guerrilla Yogi. Yogi means practitioner of the Dharma in the Vipassana practitioner circles. So we can be wise, we can be clear, and we can use the spiritual strength that we have without feeling like we have to go to war. We have to go to war with our desires. We have to go to war and smash down our greed and our delusions. I don't think it works like that, and we can wear ourselves out. Instead, we can be strategic and think, might not be unorthodox. So this has to do with creativity too, friends. How can we be creative with the use of what we have? The East Bay Meditation Center staff, which I'm fortunate to also serve on part-time, we sometimes said we are small yet mighty. And East Bay Meditation Center itself is kind of like that. We are small, and yet we're also very mighty. At this moment, so many people are looking towards you as a Sangha, towards us as a Sangha. They're looking towards us to be the model of what a meditation community that is centered on social justice and on healing can be. So we need to be as creative as possible with the resources that we have, and to understand that in community, Sangha, the third jewel of, in Buddhism, what is said are the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In Sangha, as I said before, what's so exciting about it is we don't know what resources are there, because we don't even know what resources are present in ourselves until we come into relationship with one another. It's like an alchemical reaction. And I'm looking at some of you. I can't see all of you, but I'm looking at Robert and Sandy and Kay and Stu. And I know some other friends are here. I think Master Ellis is here. And I've learned so much from you, Master Ellis. It's in relationship to one another that we strengthen and we discover qualities in ourselves of strength, of courage, of joy, of humility, of remembrance, of drawing upon our ancestors, of discovering new spiritual ancestors. It's within community that the magic occurs, which is not magic. It's the power of interdependence made manifest in who we are, in how we are, and in what we do. So thank you so much for your kind attention. And we now do have just a few minutes if you have any burning questions and any insights, because this will continue. This is a discussion that's in progress. We will continue it together as spiritual friends on the path.
If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand using the function, or you can ask it in the chat window.
So Evan, could you be scanning the chat?
Yeah, there's some gratitude from thanking you, and beautifully and inspiringly spoken from Praveen. And thank you for the wonderful insight and practice from Kelly. Thank you as always, Mushim. That hit deeply from Andres.
I like a lot what you said. How do I explain this to friends who feel otherwise? That is a great question, because I mean, that was most of my thinking as I was preparing for tonight. I thought this is kind of a daring subject matter, and I might have to run away. I myself might have to run away if this does not go over well. So thank you very much for understanding and receiving and considering. And what I would say is, I always say that we don't, I don't think it's really useful to think about, it's not strategic to think about trying to change anyone into something that they're not, to make them more palatable to ourselves. And believe you me, as a mother, I have tried. Huge freaking failure. I have a very strong-willed child, and he does live with me. He's 31. So he's now even more independent, appropriately. If he doesn't want to do something, he just says, I won't do it. So in that case, what my thoughts are about is to, if you're interested, to invite those friends into a dialogue where there's deep listening on all sides, and we don't control the other side, so we can only control ourselves, and to say, you know, this kind of interests me. What do you think of this? And maybe the friend says, I think that's a bunch of bullshit. What is this spiritual warrior stuff? That's really where they're coming from. So instead of being reactive, we could lean in a little and say, oh, thanks for sharing that with me. Please tell me more what you're thinking, where that comes from. Then they tell us more, and the relationship deepens through getting to know what our perspectives are and why we hold them. This is a totally important skill that, for those of you who know me, I have been talking about a lot recently, because the situation we're in is so polarized in society at this time. And if we don't find some way to begin to bridge some of those differences, the polarization will only increase. And so I'm seeing in the chat something about, can you say more about energetic? I would thank you, Erica. The Buddhist word virya, or virya, V-I-R-Y-A. I would encourage you to Google that in the Buddhist sense. And that that is a word that brings in this energetic quality, and you can read about it. Could you speak to the practical tactics of skillful retreat as a method during meditation? Yes, I can. And that is to really skillful retreat during meditation. Yeah, and that is to use mindfulness. So I think mindfulness is important, to be always scanning ourselves, to saying, am I over efforting? Am I striving too hard? I once knew a wonderful, very dedicated practitioner of Zen who really could not do full lotus posture, which most of us cannot, and who would force themselves into full lotus posture and just go through incredible amounts of physical pain during I don't know, like a 45-minute period of meditation, thinking that that was the way to become awakened, to get the most out of their meditation, was to force themselves to go through this. So I'm not speaking for that person. However, speaking for myself, I have done ascetic practices. I've done a lot of really harebrained things in North America and in Asia. I am no stranger to pain. And I think that one can have significant experiences, mainly like, oh my gosh, good for me. I got through that. I survived. That's great. However, what do we actually learn from it if most of our effort during a period of meditation is dealing with this incredibly strong self-subjected pain that we've inflicted upon ourselves? It might have some use in the sense of maybe at a certain point we'll be in chronic pain and we'll have developed certain strategies. However, I do believe in self-care, in moderation, and being considerate of the bodies that we have. It's not that we're always going to be completely comfortable, folks. We know that as mature adults. However, going in the direction of de-stressing, of relaxing, of trying to relax really as much as possible and rest deeply as much as possible. As people of color, I feel a lot of people are talking about radical rest. And so again, that could be looked at as that same movement of going forward into the rush and crush of the day, of our work, of our difficult relationships, of the sheer challenge of negotiating everything, and then retreating to the space that we have for our rest time, our quiet time. Hopefully, you have the conditions to get a good and restful sleep. And in all the moments we have in dropping down, again, as a student of yoga, that ending pose of Shavasana, my teacher has said, that is the most important pose when it looks like you're just lying there with your eyes closed. Can you drop everything and completely rest? Let everything rest for 10 minutes. That's my invitation to all of us.